Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited to be with you. If you are a regular to our customer success breakfasts, you probably don't know me. You haven't seen me before. Our amazing host, Rari, actually moved to the US, and that is a very new time for her. So I'm stepping in for her this morning. I have some fantastic speakers with me today, and I can't wait to give them a chance to introduce themselves to you. But just a couple of housekeeping items before we do that. The first one is please keep yourselves on mute during the conversation. Towards the end, we'll give you a chance, if we have time, to kind of unmute and ask questions in a more interactive fashion. But just as we're having the conversation, it will be fantastic to stay on mute. Camera would be great to keep on, though. We are trying to, this is our most interactive format, and we try to get as much participation as possible. So if you can put your camera, say hi to us, wave. Also, we know that if the conversation by any chance is getting a little bit more boring than you anticipated, if you're starting to fall asleep, that's a good time for us to like tell a joke, cheer you up a little bit. Questions. Slido is a fantastic place for questions. You're free to pop them in the chat as well, but in Slido we're monitoring it, and it also means that in case we have more questions than anticipated, you can upvote your questions, and we can make sure that we're asking the ones that are most relevant to you. You can use the QR code on the screen in front of you. So take a look at it now, because I'm going to stop sharing in a second. Or you can go to Slido and hit the hashtag, the event code CSN breakfast. That should take you through the questions. Any problems from a technical perspective, either pop them in the chat. If the Zoom curse catches us this morning and the Zoom breaks for any reason, we're just going to come back on the same link. So if you get kicked out, it's not you, it's us. Come back on that same link and we'll continue the conversation where we left off. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and get our fantastic presenters this morning to introduce themselves. Sim, I wonder if we can start with you.
Yep, my name's Sim. I am based in London and I'm a talent partner with Asana. Mostly been doing customer success with them, especially since July, so it's been about 7 or 8 months. And I actually hired Sally, who is also on this call.
Love the connections. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to chat to you today. Marija.
Hi everyone, I'm Marija, calling in from Warfield in Berkshire. I'm leading customer success European team at CluckUP, where I joined last October and been hiring since. So very happy to be with you this morning.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marija. And Adam.
Hi, good morning, and a very early good morning to some of you. I can't believe the levels of dedication, which is just incredible for those of you joining in the US. But I'm Adam Joseph. I'm the Regional VP of Customer Success at Gainsight, the leading technology provider in the customer success space. Love this topic and the discussion, so feel really grateful to be here today.
We're really grateful to have you as well. Today, we're going to be talking about how somebody can stand out in their customer success interview. And it's so exciting because we have Adam, a very experienced hiring manager, and I'm sure you've seen so many interviews, so many candidates. Marija, you said that you started your hiring journey in July, and you've been hiring like crazy since then. So it's a bit of a different perspective. Then we have Sim, who's a recruiter. So I'm so excited to touch on each of those different experiences and perspectives. We're going to start with I guess a simpler, more high-level question. Where is the best place to start even looking for a customer success job before you apply? Marija, in your experience, where are the best spots to look for those opportunities and find them?
Obviously, LinkedIn would be my #1 choice. There are loads of other job boards, and you can find different job advertisements in different Slack communities, many different customer success communities as well. So at the moment, job posts are everywhere. But I think it's very important to also think of tapping into your network and just talking to people that you know, even about their companies and when they might be hiring, because sometimes that's even better way to get yourself an interview. And another place, where's the best place to find a job, is when you see some of your connections who changed jobs and move to some other companies that perhaps is not even hiring yet. Get in touch with them and put yourself on the map for those people, because they can bring you in on when the time is right for hiring customer success. So it doesn't already need to be in the job board.
Absolutely, that's amazing and really, really good advice. Actually, I'd like to dig into that just a little bit. Sim, as a recruiter, like we give this advice that we should reach out proactively to companies and put ourselves on their radar. As a recruiter, if somebody reached out to you proactively like that, would that make an impression for you? Like, what would you think about this candidate that is coming to you, even when there's no job board out there and putting themselves forward?
Definitely, I think they're going to show up a lot more for me. I keep track of candidates that might not be interested now, but could be in the future. And I introduce them to my hiring managers as profiles as well. So they are aware of these candidates. So it's a great thing, because as soon as we have a role open up, we will then go to them straight away. And they'll probably be the first or second person to know about it before sometimes it's even advertised as well. So definitely.
Fantastic. It's really good to know from the source. Adam, in your experience, where should CSMs go to look for those opportunities?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I'd say is, even before I talk about where to go and look for the opportunities, just a couple of words of advice I'd say for everyone. First of all, like, draw up a shortlist. Think about maybe 5 or 10 companies that you would be your dream company. And that might be because you know people that work there, so you know a bit about the culture. It just might be something you've read in the news. So just create a shortlist. So already you're kind of thinking about, where do I really want to go? So try and be the master of your own fortune, rather than just kind of see which organizations are hiring. And even if you can't necessarily put down kind of 5 or 10 specific companies, think about the types of industries that there might be, and what have you really got a passion for, because that's what's really going to shine through, not only your proactivity but your passion. And so if it's a product or that you love, maybe you use this product every day and you think, oh my god, I'd love to work at this company. I definitely say create that short list of specific companies or aspects of companies that maybe you want to reach out to. So that would be my kind of first advice. And then in terms of where to find these roles, completely agree. Look, that you can split this up into either reactive or proactive. And we've already kind of gone through some of the main reactive ways, like LinkedIn and job boards, the customer success network. I've got my own customer success portal called customersuccessmanager.com, where I post jobs as well. So there are lots of different avenues. The market has never been as hot as it is right now when it comes to customer success, not just in terms of the number of roles, but also the breadth of those roles. And also, which is great news for everyone, in terms of the average salaries are increasing all the time as well. So it's a really hot area to look into. I think the other ones, in terms of how you can be proactive, definitely love the advice about reaching out once you've maybe come up with that short list of companies that you want to reach out to. Do get in contact with them. I think that's always appreciated, not only to the recruiters, but sometimes just dropping a note via LinkedIn to the heads or VP of CS. Tell them why you're passionate about their company, to create a dialogue so that when that role does come up, you're going to be top of mind. I love that advice around look for where your colleagues have gone. And just, you know, it could be a great way of tapping into their knowledge and getting that internal referral. I think the other couple of ways that I've found to be really beneficial in the past is build up news alerts as well. So when you can see there's been a funding round within a company that you really admire, that often means that they're going to be using some of that funding in terms of growing the business, and particularly around customer success. And then lastly, we've got many organizations that potentially, for example, are US-led. They've got European customers, but they don't have a European office. And so sometimes actually creating the need for them just helps make sure you're front of mind from whenever they do want to do that. It's a great way of getting in, and I know a number of people that have started off that way and finding their dream CSM job.
Fantastic. Already on the first questions, I think that we have some 3 amazing experts when it comes to interviewing and where you can find your jobs. And specifically, Adam, thank you so much for those details. To all of our attendees, make sure that you stick with us throughout today's breakfast, because we have a little surprise for you towards the end, where you can get maybe even more value from speaking to our candidates. So make sure you stick towards the end. Great. So that's a talk about where the opportunities are and where we can find them. Let's talk a little bit more about the interview process specifically. Can you talk us through what the interview process looks like at your company today? So Sim, I'd like to start with you this time. Like, what does their interview process look like in Asana?
Yeah, so the first call is a screening call with me. This is more just to get an overview of your experience, and I'll talk you through Asana and what we can offer. Then there's a call with the hiring manager. So this is one, to understand your motivations for Asana, your experience in a bit more depth, and it gives them a chance to give their vision of where they see the role going. And then what we call our offsite on-site is just because of COVID. So everything is done over Zoom. You'll have 2 30-minute competency-based conversations. So they have different focus areas. For example, customer obsession is pretty key in customer success. And then you'll have a presentation as well. So I would send you the prompt beforehand. You'll go through it, create a presentation off the back of that, and then the panel will act in the space of a customer. And sometimes you can ask for extra interviews if you want to speak to more of the team, or if you're interested in culture as well. So we'll get you a designated person to speak to you through that as well. So it's about 5 or 6 people that you'll speak to.
Okay, so quite a few steps in there. Adam, how does that compare, I guess, to Gainsight where you are? How does it compare to your full experience? Is that a usual interview process that you've seen, or do they tend to differ from company to company?
Yeah, look, it definitely differs from business to business, particularly if you need to have some specialist knowledge, which, so there may be a kind of an additional round or two of the interview process for that. I think as a hiring manager in a hiring company, I think what we have to try and do is balance, doing our due diligence on any candidate, as well as trying to make it as efficient as possible for both parties. So, and particularly because the CS market is so hot at the moment, those organizations that have 7, 8, even 9, I remember early on in my career, I went through an interview process. It was a bit like being on the Apprentice TV show. I had to go through every week. There was a new challenge with different presentations, people to meet. And by the time I got to the end of the process, they lost the funding anyway because they took so long. So I think that's very much from days gone by. How it typically works in the CS world, as Sim said, you typically have that initial screening interview. At Gainsight, we have something slightly different that a lot of organizations are now adopting. It's something called a CCAT test, and that CCAT stands for a Criteria Cognitive Aptitude test. And what that does, we're using science. So we're trying, just like in customer success, to mix up the objective and the subjective together to make sure we find the ideal candidate. And what that CCAT test does, it looks at things like critical thinking, problem solving, and your ability to take in new information. So we have that there. That was brought in as part of our parent business, Vista. They use that across all of their portcos, and we've found that to be really, really useful. So once candidates are through that recruiter process and that CCAT test, then there's a 30-minute interview with the hiring manager. And then the final stage is just that traditional panel where, and very often, lots of candidates get stressed because if we ask them to speak on a subject, maybe we even get them to present, we give them access to Gainsight and we say, just try and present it back to us. Now, my word of advice would be there. I'm not testing you in terms of your subject matter expertise in Gainsight because you only had access to it for a limited time. What I'm really looking for there is how you do in a kind of pressurized situation. How engaging are you during a presentation? So how often are you kind of checking in for understanding? How well have you understood the brief? So when we give a brief out, I'd always expect the candidate to come back with a qualifying question or two. So for me, it's less about subject matter expertise, unless I've asked you to present on your own company, in which case I would expect that. But traditionally, it's more about how you deal with that situation, what kind of questions you ask, how engaging and open are you in that presentation, and that would be the final stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I love that idea of it's not so much about being correct, but it's about your approach to the task. And when we step into tasks like this, when you've seen candidates take them on, I'd love to hear a little bit about the key mistakes that you've seen them do during interviews or during those final stages. Marija, I'd like to start with you on this one. What are the key mistakes that you've seen candidates do when they interview?
Well, first mistake would be when they don't ask the questions about the brief. It's not necessarily a mistake, but very often we see during the panel discussions that maybe they didn't have 100% all the information that they needed, or they just misunderstood it. So just getting back to the recruiter or hiring managers with questions, it's just important. And it also shows that you are thinking through that assignment, that you care about making it well. And that, of course, you have a confirmation that you are on the right way. So that is related to the preparation. Next thing would be when you are, again, not asking questions to the panel. I think that is a huge mistake, just because, again, we are not assessing how good a subject matter you are on our product at that moment, although you do need to do a little demo and present on the product. However, I want to know how you would be in front of the customer in this situation, how engaging you would be. Would it be a situation where you either have a huge list of interview questions for the customers, or are you really spontaneous and you want to engage them in the conversation, you show them that you are hearing what they need, and then you're just really open to have that discussion? For me, that's really most important. Yeah, I think those are the most important ones: preparation and kind of the lack of interactions during that panel discussion.
Yeah, I hear you. It's so true, right? Like when we come to a panel discussion, we want to show so much of what we have prepared and put ourselves in the spotlight that we completely forget that customer success management is such an interactive job. Sim, is that similar to what you're seeing as a recruiter? What are the key mistakes that candidates make doing interviewing?
Yeah, definitely. Very much echoing what Marija said. So I think a big thing is use your talent partner. We see where candidates are maybe going wrong. We can give you advice. If there's, we see that brief every day, and we're giving it out to candidates very frequently. So we usually know it quite well. So, and we know what the hiring manager is looking for and the panel are looking for. And I think another thing is showing passion for the product. So when you're talking to a customer, that's very much key in a customer success role. So showing that to the panel and showing that you understand the value of the product. For example, Asana, we don't need you to be a subject matter expert, but seeing why Asana is doing so well and why a customer will gain value from it, I think is really key, and that will come across in your presentation. And then lastly, that interaction piece. I think candidates forget that it is supposed to be a conversation, and it is supposed to be fun on both sides in that sense. So it doesn't have to be very interactional. And that's where I see a lot of candidates as well potentially fall on as well.
It's a great point. I love to dig into that passion piece a little bit more. Like, it's so key, specifically in customer success management. When you sit on some of those panel interviews, Adam, like, what is going to make you feel or believe that the candidate is passionate for your product and the value that it brings? What are you looking for to ascertain that?
I think the big thing is understanding why people use Asana. I've had candidates that have used it for, one was using it to track his wife's pregnancy. So you can see already that he's using that outside. But I think if you watch the demos, that's going to give you that every company has a website and blogs, and they will explain the value. And then I think making it your own in that sense. So why do you think working for Asana is going to add value to you? And why do you think a customer is going to see it as well? I think that's a big thing.
Yeah. I'm seeing the comments. Do your research on who you're talking to, so important as well. Right, LinkedIn is there, and all of your names are all over LinkedIn, so people can check them out. I'd love, from like a hiring manager perspective, where does that passion for the product come from? Like, is there something specific that a candidate can do or like show to you that would convince you that yes, they're passionate, for example, about Gainsight? When you sit on some of those interviews, Adam, what shows you that candidate is passionate?
Yeah, I think there are a number of ways that you can demonstrate passion. I think, for example, if someone has, we're fortunate that quite a few people who interview with us have actually used the product in the past, and so can talk to some of the outcomes that it's helped them lead, particularly around things like efficiency gain and how it's been a real game changer for them. I think even if you're not a user of Gainsight, specifically the product, it's always great to see, passion can take many forms. So that might be a webinar. I mean, even joining, for example, if anyone on here, if we interview with Gainsight in the future and say, hey, we was actually on that webinar panel that you did with the Customer Success Network, Or, we joined Pulse one year and we couldn't believe, we were blown away by X, Y, and Z. There are so many different ways that you can demonstrate passion just outside of saying that they like the product. So A, having some tangible experience actually with it, or B, even utilizing some of the material. And I think now more than ever, in terms of content creation and distribution, organizations like virtually every single organization that we all represent on here produce so much content, but so much of that content never gets talked about, mentioned, or even clicked on. So if you can show that you've demonstrated that you've taken time outside of your day to really interact with that content, but most importantly, what you've learned from it, and do you have a view on it, that shows me that someone's really passionate. So it's not just how you say it or what you say, it's kind of like, are you able to demonstrate what you've done over and above what 99.9% of other candidates that I'm talking to will show.
100%. Hear you completely. So some great tips about the panel interview is taking a step back. Even before we reach panel interview, the first thing that we do is we send out a CV. And Sim, I'm sure that you go through hundreds and hundreds of those. What are the key mistakes that you see candidates making those CVs?
I think the main one is relevance to the role. So I understand that candidates are applying to a lot of jobs, so it is hard to tailor CVs, but especially within customer success, if you're reading the JD and you're seeing the top, say, 3 points in our job description, and you're relating that back to your experience, I'm going to straight away advance you quite quickly. And as a recruiter as well, I'm going through so many CVs, I will look at mostly the first page. So to have all the necessary info in the first page is really, really key. I see a lot of candidates put their education at the top, which fair enough is very important, but I think really highlight your customer success roles at the top and what you're doing, the size of customers you're working with, any project work that you've done or achievements that you've made in those specific roles. I think that's really key, and that's what really stands out to me when I'm going through those.
Super interesting. Marija, in the startup environment, do you get to cast your eyes through CVs, and what do you see work and not work there?
Yes, firstly, I think that I'm very fortunate being one of the first ones in Europe. I really had the opportunity to constantly look at candidates' CVs. I find it incredibly interesting. And there are lots of lessons that I have learned as well. So what Sim mentioned, yeah, obviously CV has to be tailored. But then I would also say cover letters are dead, right? They don't even exist, or at least I never see them. And in your CV, I have to read customer success. So if the CV is too generic that I can see that it can be suitable for support role or project management or something else, it's not going to get my attention, just because I have to think hard, do you really even want a job in customer success? There are hundreds other who do want it. One thing also I think it's important to have that little maybe objective at the top of a CV where you can show your narrative. You can really say, I am whatever I am, I'm doing this and that, and this is now why I'm looking to get into the role I'm applying for. Now, I believe that's really valuable, especially for someone who wants to enter the industry, who has a background that potentially is not traditional and that they don't have so-called relevant experience, but showing that passion for customer success, even in one paragraph, is really important. And then I would also say just listing responsibilities in your previous jobs rather than quantifiable achievements is a big mistake, because then most of the CVs look very similar. They're all copy-pasted based on what job description says. So even if you say, I'm responsible for managing European customers, that sounds very different than if you say I'm responsible for managing 200 mid-market European customers with the ARR of 2 million. Straight away, you're giving some very concrete examples for hiring manager to understand what is your book of business, what have you done so far, and would you be a good fit for this role?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with the objective piece. Like sometimes I almost feel like the passion that we talked about, like, can really shine in those 2 lines of where you'd like to get to and get the hiring manager really excited. I have a question in Slido actually, which I think really fits. Do hiring managers look at candidates' LinkedIns before they interview? Marija, do you look at someone's LinkedIn before you jump on an interview with them?
Always. It's part of my CV screening process. LinkedIn is always next to it. Yes, absolutely.
What can attract you? Like, what can impress you on a candidate's LinkedIn? And on the other hand, what can put you off a little bit? What are the do's and don'ts?
A positive thing would always be seeing any type of engagement on LinkedIn, seeing that they have any connections within the customer success community. So at least we have some shared connection, or they perhaps are part of customer success network or other network where you can really see that they are already thinking about the role. They are on the places where they can find out more about the role. They can speak with other people, and that gives me a sense that, yeah, they could be really a good candidate because they're resourceful. They know how to use resources available for them to learn. I don't think I would have any particular don'ts apart of if the LinkedIn is, really potentially old and no one is active there and nothing is happening on the LinkedIn. It doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, but it just doesn't give you an impression of someone who is really current with the things that is happening in the industry.
Completely. Adam, what are your thoughts? Do you go on LinkedIn and check out candidates before the interview?
Yeah, I do. I think there are always going to be things on LinkedIn that won't come across in the CV. First and foremost, I'm looking for any inconsistencies in terms of, the job titles, responsibilities, and even timelines. I've seen big differences between when someone says they're at a certain organization. So first of all, are there any red flags that would tell me maybe the CV isn't all that it seems? The other thing that I do tend to look at are the recommendations. And so one thing I'd highly recommend if you want to really stand out as a candidate and you're doing some amazing work at your existing organization, I think sometimes we feel a little shy of asking for recommendations because it seems a bit, oh, will you recommend me? But, as you think about your career and if you're doing an amazing job, there's absolutely nothing about getting that public endorsement. So, reading through those recommendations, to me, if I can read not just people that you've recommended, so they're kind of like, you scratch my back and I'll do yours, but if I can see throughout your career that there's been a number of different people that have really found a massive difference in what you've done, that will make a real positive difference to me as well. So first of all, make sure that your CV and LinkedIn are the same. There aren't any big glaring differences between the two. And definitely that recommendations piece is also really important.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Thanks for raising it. We had a whole host of questions sent in from the people who registered for this breakfast, and I'd love to go into some of those. One of them is, does it matter to have a customer success diploma, certification, or training course to start in the field of customer success? Adam, we'll come back to you. Are those things important? Do you look out for them?
Well, look, I think it's not essential, but it certainly helps. So why does it help? Well, I think the first of which, it demonstrates to me that you've got a passion for customer success because you've taken time out to outside of your day job to really kind of study and hone your art. It shows that you've already got, if you've gone through a customer success qualification, it tells me that you've already got a sound knowledge of some of the best practices and frameworks around CS as well. So look, I think it definitely helps and it gives me confidence. And moreover, I think as well, when you're introduced to your new business and meet your new customers, telling people that I'm, Gainsight Pulse Plus qualified level 3, immediately as you're looking to build credibility with new customers, I think it helps to state that. But I think there are other ways you can do it other than just having a diploma. So if you, again, want to differentiate yourself, like, for example, if someone tells me they're passionate about customer success, I say, well, what were your thoughts on the original blue book of customer success? That, most people who I speak to, it's always great to see, look, they've read the original book on CS that Dan Steinman wrote some years ago, and there have been many other great books as well. So have you taken the time to read a book, listen to a customer success podcast? And if so, which ones are your favorite? Have you written a blog in customer success? Or if not, have you kind of commented on other people's blogs? What's your view in terms of what other people have written? Have you taken the time to be mentored? Or if you're experienced in the field, have you mentored someone else? Have you been part of the Customer Success Network? Obviously, everyone on this webinar has, but when I'm speaking to people who don't have a diploma, I'm looking for just cues that they've taken the time to go over and above, like being part of the community, or even going above that and volunteering to help out with a cafe or something else. So have you given back to the community, and if so, how? Is to me shows passion as much as it does about a CS diploma. So it definitely helps, but there are many different ways that you can show that you're trying to improve your professional skills within CS.
That's fantastic. Marija, what are your thoughts on that? Do you look out for those bits, diplomas, certifications, or various other ways in which we've gotten involved in the field?
Yes, I would really say, as Adam said, none of those things are really essential. At the end of the day, you need someone who is really qualified and who can show you evidence that they can really do the job well. That's what matters. But in this day and age, when we seem to be bombarded with so many amazing resources, as you said, from communities to blog posts to podcasts to you name it, sometimes it could also be almost a red flag if you don't have any idea of what is happening within the industry. Just because if you are not current in the industry at the moment, how can I expect you to be great in your job if you are not proactively looking for learning and development opportunities within the industry? So that would be important for me, more from the perspective of behaviors and learning motivation, rather than from perspective of consuming the content to help you out in your job.
Yep. I think you say something that's so key and important, is like customer success, especially right now. It's such a dynamic industry and so much is happening. I think about 6 years ago what customer success was and what kind of industry it was and what it is today. And I think it's becoming more and more dynamic. This leads me to another question which we had, is that it's a new discipline. It's a very dynamic discipline. CSMs move a lot. How important, when you look at a CV or you talk to a candidate, is previous tenure as a CSM? If a candidate has moved a lot, does that kind of put you off, or is it almost expected in today's day and age that a candidate would be moving companies quite regularly? Sim, I'd like to start with you on this one.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's always a confidence boost for us that someone has been in a company for a long time. It shows that loyalty and that interest in a company, and the progression is great to see. We have had candidates that have not necessarily been in a role as long, for example, between 6 months to a year. And if a candidate we'll always pick up on it and we'll always ask around it. So if a candidate can explain why, and sometimes there are great reasons, funding was lost, or the role wasn't available, there was a restructure, etc. Or if personally that they didn't agree with how that company was run, that's absolutely fine, as long as you are able to talk about it. I'd say the average tenure that I usually see in a CS role is from 2 years to about 3.5 years. So if you can stay in a company for longer, that's great. If there's other reasons why, and you can talk about those points, then that's absolutely fine.
Would it make you nervous if someone's been in a company for more than 3.5 years before they moved?
Definitely not. I think that's a great thing. That's never a bad thing for us. And I think when someone's been in a company for that long, they've seen a lot of change. They're used to change. They understand progression. They've probably seen CS through quite a few cycles as well. I think customer success has changed a lot, especially over the last few years. So they've probably seen that change and may have been a part of that change within the company. So that's always a good thing.
Great. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask Marija.
I would say if someone is with a company for 3 years on the same role, for me, that would potentially be a red flag, thinking that, perhaps they are not ambitious to just develop themselves, to grow into the role. And of course, there are various reasons. Maybe the growth is not as big as they would want it. But within 3 years, I would expect someone to at least be promoted once. Especially within customer success, when the movement seems to be much quicker, and very often we see people moving roles from 18 months onwards.
Yep. In a situation where somebody hasn't progressed for 3 years, is there a story? Is there something that you would see as a good reason not to? Like, what would you expect the justification there to be?
Again, good enough reason is that they really love their job. That's absolutely valid point for staying in the role for that long. But I would probably be asking, was there potential team lead opportunities? If you're not interested in it, that's fine. So I just want to understand the motivations. Does it mean that in your career aspirations, you just really want to be an amazing CSM and progress as a CSM, not moving into those other directions, which is again, perfectly fine, but I would like to have a conversation about it.
Got it. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask 2 more questions before we go over to Slido, because Slido is populating. Please keep popping your questions in there to all of our attendees. Looking at things a little bit from the other perspective, I think we've talked a lot about how candidates can be better at interviews, but would love to also touch on how we can help candidates make sure that they're applying for the right role. When you're hiring as a recruiter or a hiring manager, how do you help? What are some ways in which you help candidates assess whether they're trying for the right role for them? Adam, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so coming back, I can link this to the former question. In fact, so one of the reasons when I ask why someone's only been in a role for say 3 or 6 months and they're already applying, one of the answers I hear is it's not what I expected, or how the role was sold to me and the actuality of it were 2 different things. So I think one thing that I can try and do to make sure that the candidate really understands what they're walking into is that I'll ask some questions to make sure they understand after we've gone through the process about our company, the role, the responsibilities. So I'll have them read that back to me just to make sure we're completely in alignment in terms of what they think they're applying for. Because sometimes we assume, and sometimes we use language that's very internal, and we just kind of say it like it's natural. Obviously from someone external, or especially in an interview process, they might not always want to call out acronyms or other things that they don't understand. So have them read back to you exactly the role, the company, the culture and responsibilities that they're doing. I think the other thing, no company is perfect. We're like families. No family is perfect. No company is perfect. And so one of the things that I've learned to do over my career as a hiring manager is to try and actually be vulnerable, which is another great quality that I see in people. There's nothing worse when someone is so brash and they're kind of saying that they're perfect, because no one is. So I will be very open and honest about some of the challenges with the role and the company. And, in return, what I'm looking for is I'll admit to some of the areas where we could improve. But what I'm looking for, and one of the ways I'll sell the role, is like, we want you to be part of the solution, because as the leader, I don't have all of the answers. No matter how experienced you are, you're always learning. And so I think, opening up in terms of some of those challenges and making sure they feel part of the solution, I think is really, really important. I think it's really important to understand not just about are they suitable for the role, but also some of their personality traits, because Gainsight culture, we're a very human first business. And so the culture and what motivates them personally can be just as important as, what motivates them professionally. So I want to make sure I understand that mix to ensure that it will be a great role for them, not just from, they've got the skills, experience and technical knowledge, but are they going to improve us as a team and a group of people? I think the other thing that I'll try and do to make sure I've got to help candidates ensure that they're in the right role is, and something again I've learned over time, is try and avoid generalisms. I really like talking about specifics. So if you know what one of the challenges is in the role that they're coming into, really try and drill deep into a specific example of where maybe they haven't faced exactly the same challenge, but if you've been in the customer success world for a while, or even if you're applying for a CS role coming in from places like account management or product or engineering, you can always find examples of how they've overcome adversity, how they've thought on their feet, how they've used ingenuity, proactivity, and applied that and what the result would be. And sometimes I quite enjoy hearing about people's failures as much as their successes, because failure is always one of the best learnings and helps you develop as a professional. Also shows me that you can be vulnerable and honest during an interview, which are some other great traits that I look for. And when they're walking into a role, where do they want to be in that next kind of year to 2? Is it they see this role and they really want to be in that CS role, and then potentially look for promotions super important to them, or actually they're interested in developing, coming into a CSM role, but actually you're more technically minded, and what you'd love to do in the future is maybe move into customer success operations. There's no right or wrong thing, but I think being able to validate those kind of things will really help me make sure that the candidate really understands the good, the bad, and the ugly about working in the company that I represent.
Yep, amazing. Marija, what are your thoughts? How do we make candidates assess whether that's the right step for them?
Very similar to what Adam said. I think it's really important to be honest and have those conversations. In my case, CluckUP is a startup company, so all the conversations are around what does it mean to be in this environment, in startup environment. What are your motivations? Do you want to be part of a team where you can really create everything from scratch, create the whole foundations for the team? Is that something that excites you, or are you really type of the person who would really want to almost be told what to do and then do a perfect job? But the environment might be different. I also like to ask, what is it that they typically enjoy in their career? Is it really that part of helping customers and being directly in contact with them, or problem solving, or is it just being in a great company that they can be proud of? All of those motivations are internal and they all are valid, but they will just tell you a bit different things about particular candidates. And I also like to always see what are their career aspirations. Would this role be, just a stepping stone for something else that they want to achieve pretty quickly? Potentially not even stay in a role long enough because they are looking to jump somewhere else, or do they want to be part of, again, creating something new? Any career aspirations are, again, great, they're personal, but it's something that I like to have conversation with and assess at the beginning. And then also having those behavioral or situational questions and really trying to assess how do you deal in the situation when potentially there is loads of changes and you're constantly asked to do something differently and you constantly need to improvise or create things. How you just deal in different situations, that will help me assess, are you ready to be at this company at this time?
Super useful. Thank you so much for sharing that insight, both of you. We're going to go with one last question and then we're going to jump to the attendee questions. And I'm going to ask each of you that. If you could go back in time, thinking about when you interviewed for your current role, what advice would you give yourself? Sim, we'll just start with you when you were interviewing for your role at Asana. What advice would you give yourself from the perspective of time?
Oh, I think don't let the nerves get to you. I think that's something because that really affects how you come across in interviews. And I've just seen it on my side with Asana and interviewing other candidates. I think I know it's a hard thing and that's more of a mental thing and it's really trying to push past that. But if you prep enough and if you understand the company enough and the role enough and you know who you're speaking to, then you can only do the best that you can do. So that was something that I would definitely go back and tell myself.
So fantastic. I want to give this advice to myself every day of my life. Super valid. Marija, how about you?
I would say feel equal. The company needs you very often as much as you need them for the job. So you don't have to feel that you are in a disbalance of power. You can be equal when you are in job interview.
Great advice. Thank you. And Adam?
Always feel that you can be vulnerable as well. So don't be afraid to talk about the challenges as well as, why you're going to be great at the role. Talk about, feel very open and talking about things that you're not sure about and things you want to explore into. And again, as thinking now when I talk to candidates, vulnerability and authenticity rank so highly in my qualifying criteria that so don't be afraid to say something that maybe makes you feel uneasy, because I think that really helps breed credibility, trust, and part of a culture that I'm looking for.
Fantastic. Absolutely love that. Before we jump into the questions that you have all submitted through Slido, which thank you so much for that. I mentioned that we have a little surprise for you. Gainsight, as one of our key sponsors right now, has offered to help you even further in the advancement of your career. So at the end of today's session, you'll have the chance to win a fantastic coaching session with Adam. All you need to do is take a few minutes to share your key learnings from today's breakfast on LinkedIn. Have a think, what did you learn? All you have to do is post this on LinkedIn, tag the Customer Success Network, tag Gainsight, and use the hashtag CSM breakfast. Very important to use the hashtag so that we can find your posts after. You can do this from now until Wednesday next week, which is 6th of April. On Wednesday, we're going to pick at random 3 very lucky winners, and we're going to connect them with Adam. So have a think about what you learned today. Tell us about it, and you might learn even more. Many thanks to Adam and Gainsight for providing us with their time.
Really excited about that.
Amazing. We're going to jump straight into some Slido questions. Shall we start with the first one? What advice do you have for a candidate that has no direct customer success experience, but many excellent skills? How can they stand out above the fray? Stem, when you look at a CV, would you ever put forward a candidate that doesn't have any direct customer success experience?
Yeah, definitely. We've hired a couple of candidates that haven't got the direct experience. For example, we've hired someone with more of that project management experience. What we like to see is someone that is customer facing and client facing and solution driven, sees the importance of how to speak to customers and how to handle them, and is comfortable in that space. And that's probably the main thing that we look for. And a passion for CS, definitely. So in a CV, explaining why you're applying for a CS role and why you think your skills could match that quite clearly. That's a big thing as well for me.
Amazing. Marija, anything that is important to you when somebody doesn't have direct CS experience?
Yes, I'm sure that there are loads of amazing transferable skills for everyone to highlight in the CV. But I would also say CSM is currently not only customer success role. There are lots of roles such as customer education or what else? Customer training, customer advocate. There are loads of variations at the moment that might be even better suitable for someone's previous experience. And I remember when I wanted to go into customer success, at that moment of time, I was in project management, and I found next role, which was kind of onboarding specialist. So doing that, what I was doing in a customer success environment, and that gave me exposure for it. So just because you want to enter customer success industry at the moment, it doesn't mean that CSM role in particular has to be that next one. You can really leverage your current skills and expertise to few of the other roles within the customer success field.
Absolutely, that's a really great point, actually. Like, where do your skills fit best? And think about customer success as more than just customer success management. Amazing. So that we can cover as many questions as we can. The next one is particularly for Adam. Adam, you mentioned the expectations for candidates are higher. Can you expand on those expectations and how they compare to a few years ago?
Yeah, I think if I understand the concept of the question correctly, I think what I'm looking for is now more than ever, there are so many resources at candidates' disposal. You know, so much is available without needing any kind of paywall. So what I'm looking for is how have they used kind of all of those available resources, and that could be being part of this customer success network. It could be, you know, they've listened to one of my podcasts. It could be so many ways. I mean, we spoke about qualifications earlier. So whereas it's not one thing in particular, what I'm really looking for is how have they demonstrated passion? Because I get told that so many people are passionate about the role and customer success, which I love, but how has that passion manifested itself in something you've been able to do in your, you know, outside of your day-to-day work? So when I say expectations are high, your CV gets you to the interview part, and in order for me to interview you, you've already kind of successfully gone through typically a manager interview as well. So if you really want to differentiate yourself and show me that you've done that, then demonstrate what you've done over and above your day job. And how you've tried to develop yourself. Those are the kinds of things that I'm looking for when I say the expectations right now are higher, because there are so many candidates for every role, and you'll be amazed how 99.9% of people don't do that.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. The next question, I think it's probably a couple of questions in one, so we'll take it one at a time. What are some of the best questions that you've heard from a candidate? Marija, do you have any favorite ones?
Sorry, I was just typing something in the chat. The best questions would be when candidates ask me about the culture and what do we value in our team. That's one of my favorite topics that I like to talk about, and how we value professional and personal wellness. So yes, questions that are not directly related to the job description, but more of the wider company.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of my favorite questions is, why did you join, and why are you still at the company? And I can talk about it for 10 minutes. So that's great. Sim, what are some of the greatest questions you've heard from candidates?
I really like it when candidates ask what are the team struggling with at the moment, because that's a very good opportunity for them to really lean on their expertise. I think Adam mentioned it earlier, especially at Asana, the hiring managers, they want expertise that they don't necessarily have. So they want to add to their team. So if I'm giving you a problem that the CS team have mentioned to me, and you can come back to me with something that could help with that, or you can say, I've lent on that in the past, I think that's really, really good.
Great. Adam.
Yeah, I think one of the best questions I heard was, outside of the ones already given, was, where in the customer journey do you think needs the most amount of development? And can you give me some examples of where, of how an impact from someone in my, the impact of someone in my role has manifested itself in productive change within the business? So that could be a process change, it could be a technology change, but that I thought was a really good question around, what is the soft underbelly of our process today, and can I come in and actually, if I spot an issue, what's my ability to then affect change?
Great. And the last one is, again, a couple of questions in one. I'll try to rephrase it a little bit. What are some questions you've asked a candidate during an interview? Do you have a favorite question that you always ask that's really helps you understand the quality of that candidate? Sim, do you have any favorite questions that you always ask candidates?
My main one is motivations, or what's important to you in a CS role. One, I can then go back and say, we can't offer that, or maybe this might not be the right role for you because you're looking for something a little bit more technical. This is more on that relationship management role. And also then I get a chance to understand how Asana could potentially be a good fit for them. And then I could be flagging that to managers as well. So they really want a role where they can do this, this, and this. And we have the capacity to provide that for them. So that's a big one, I think.
Great. Adam, do you have any questions you always ask?
Yeah, I mean, obviously an interview process is there's always risk, because someone can put themselves forward as not exactly the most accurate reflection of who they are. So what I'm looking for is, where is the development needs? And I guess this comes part to my early discussion around vulnerability. So a question I sometimes ask is, if I was to speak to one of your managers in the past, and I said, what was the kind of number one development area that you had, what would they say? And so that can sometimes, just so I can try and eke out where I might see some of the development challenges for that candidate if we bring them on.
Yeah, and it also just
one
really
question, the answer I would urge someone not to say, which sometimes come up a lot, is, oh, they're too hardworking. And so sometimes, I mean, I get why they say that, because they're trying to turn a challenge into something that might make you think is actually a positive. But I want to hear, any kind of specific development need. It could be around a hard skill around a technology. It could be a soft skill around presenting. It could be just confidence, whatever it is. So it's interesting to see how people answer it, and shows me how vulnerable they're willing to be.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. It also just shows humility, right? You want somebody who is self-aware and humble. Marija, do you have questions that are always in your interviews?
If you've got a role and now it's 1 year into the role, what would be your main achievements?
I love this question.
And that's just one that,
steal it.
Yeah, it's a bit creative.
Okay, amazing. We have 4 minutes, and I'd like to turn this on its head and finish another, maybe a little bit more personal questions. When you're interviewing, What was one question you will never forget you were being asked? Maybe because it was a really good question, or maybe because it caught you completely off guard. But when you think about questions that you were asked when you were interviewing, what pops into your head? Whoever thinks about it the first can jump in. I think I've asked a difficult one. Adam, do you have any that jump to your mind?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking the audience rather than the presenters. So that's why I kept quiet. Just sorry, can you just rephrase the question? Maybe I didn't quite get what you were looking for.
When you're thinking about questions that you were asked when you were interviewing,
yeah.
What's one you'll never forget?
Ah, okay. I remember once in an interview a long time ago, someone said to me, take every letter from your name and then use it to describe, then find a word that you can use that helps describe you. Oh, crikey. All right. I've never been asked before. Like A, adventurous, B, demonstrative, A, ambitious, and so on and so forth. So that I've only ever been asked that once in an interview, and it was really weird. So yeah, that was probably the strangest question I've ever been asked. And by the end, I got to the end of my surname, I was just making up, whatever. It was just a challenge to think of a word that I could come up with.
I hope you went with marvelous for the M.
I wish I'd had you there kind of prompting me, because I probably could make much less impressive than that.
I love this one. Marija, do you have any that you can think of?
I don't think I have any weird ones. I just got a question once, well, can you start a month before I actually wanted? So it wasn't a weird one, but yeah, something that I wanted to push back on. Sorry, not having any of those very cool stories like Adam.
Fair enough. I think that's a good story. Like, we should be pushing back on things that we're not comfortable with, right? Great advice. And Sim?
I got asked what animal I would want to be.
Oh yeah.
I might always my go-to is always an elephant, just because they're loyal and companies want loyalty. So
spirit animal.
I don't know. I can't answer that one now. I don't know.
Love that. That's actually like turning not fantastic question into a good one for you. So we're gonna wrap it up there. Thank you so much to our panelists today, Marija, Adam, and Sim. We've all been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Everyone who attended and people who joined at 3 a.m. their time, incredible. I'm so grateful for your participation. Let us know what you learned on LinkedIn, and look out for our next events coming up over the next couple of months. I really look forward to seeing you there, and have a fantastic rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.